From the 3rd chapter of 1 Peter. Can anyone really harm you for being eager to do good deeds? Even if you have to suffer for doing good things, God will bless you. Stop being afraid and don't worry about what people might do. Honor Christ and let him be the Lord of your life. Always be ready to give an answer when somebody asks you about your hope. Give a kind and respectful answer and keep your conscience clear. This way you will make people ashamed for saying bad things about your good conduct as a follower of Christ. You are better off to obey God and suffer for doing right than suffer for doing wrong. Here ends the reading. Many of you probably saw the movie God's Not Dead. An inspirational story of a young college freshman who refused to write God's not dead on a piece of paper. And his professor challenged him to defend his faith in front of his philosophy class. Well, in the culture in which he lived, the clash between those who believe and those who think faith in God is nonsense takes place not just in classrooms, but in life settings all the time. When it comes to faith in God, living by it, and proclaiming it, God doesn't want us to speculate. As Peter says, we need to be willing to let others know where our hope lies. The sequel, God's Not Dead 2, was recently released. So for the next few weeks, I'm going to be basing my sermon on this film. Here's the trailer to the film. Well, in this sequel, as you saw, the drama goes from the classroom to the courtroom. The story of a high school teacher who mentions Jesus Christ in her response to a question by one of her students. Well, the young girl had been in a spiritual search since the death of her brother. And she begins by looking for answers in the Bible. So her question in class is a sincere effort to try to understand Jesus' teaching and how to put it in real-life situations. And when the teacher answers from her faith base, she finds herself facing legal action that could cost her her career as well as a public outpouring of hostility. So you might ask, is this just a story? Or does it really reflect the landscape of our culture? The film also lifts up the truth that the presence of evil and suffering can produce a search for meaning in the midst of pain. The more dangerous life becomes, the more important it is for the gospel message to be spoken and to be heard. When I say 911, I bet there's nobody in this room who doesn't understand what I'm talking about. See, if terror and evil, if they have an anniversary, it might very well be 911. The place where the worst of terror took place is now known as Ground Zero. That place and that time have caused so many people to ask the question, how can any people do such horrible things? Why is there such evil in the world? And perhaps many even ask, where was God? Why didn't he step in? Why didn't he help? Well, the movie God's Not Dead 2 tackles those questions from the onset. And isn't that part of the reason we exist as a church, to help people know that there is a God? We're here so that people come to know that God can give meaning to their lives even when it seems to be falling apart. I've often said that we exist as a church to change lives. And this only happens when people discover that God is the answer to life's most challenging questions. The storyline in the movie introduces a young high school girl whose brother has died. She's broken-hearted, looking for some comfort, looking for some answers. And she lives in a family that has no faith. And that only brings her to a good deal of darkness and uncertainty. The movie makes this statement, and I like it. Atheism doesn't take away pain, it just takes away hope. I've had people from time to time asking, Pastor, isn't it really difficult to conduct funerals? Of course. There are some funerals that tug at my heart very deeply. But I see it as a holy privilege to be able to proclaim a message of hope in the midst of darkness. See, God is love and mercy. In his love and mercy has designed his church as a people of refuge and hope in the midst of darkness and pain. See, in faith we know that God is the source of life and hope. Evil that rests in hearts, Christ came to change. And the power of evil, Christ came to destroy. There's an incredible hope built on God's promise in Christ, regardless of what we are or going through. There's an important thing to remember. Evil will never have the last word. That's why the first title of my sermon for this series is Finding Faith at Ground Zero. Of course, when I'm talking about Ground Zero, I'm going to direct you to a different place. See, Ground Zero now we kind of think of as a place of terror and evil and hate. And yes, now some hope. But do you know where the Christian's Ground Zero is? And what we can call our Ground Zero? It's a sign of hope, love, and victory. See, our Ground Zero is the cross. I'm not sure that evil is more alive than it's ever been. But you probably understand what I mean when I say that the world is getting a lot smaller. Something happens on the other side of the world, across the globe, and we instantly know about it. What takes place in the Middle East is known about immediately in Middle America. And you know that almost every bit of news You know what it's called? Breaking news. It's all the time. Everything's breaking news. And we seem to be at a non-stop pace of alert as the pain of the world is brought to us in high definition. Now, we might complain about the long lines at airport checkpoints, but we also understand that we're in this constant state of alert, constantly, because evil is alive and it wants to hurt us. Some people, of course, become numb to it. But many of us find ourselves in a constant state of despair because there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel. So the premise of the film is that pain and suffering, as well as fear and despair, are so prevalent that the heart of most people are in some sense of searching for answers. See, in the wake of crisis, or the natural response is to try to seek answer and meaning. Rebecca Alonso, author of The Devil in the Pew number 7, was only 7 years old when she saw her parents attacked by an intruder. She also watched as the assailant was convicted and let out in just a few years. But instead of turning against God, she turned to him for help. She said, I needed God more than I needed to be mad at him. She came to believe and accept that God was not the source of pain, but the healer of it. So the film suggests that this is the great blessing we have as believers. We've been given the comfort and the hope in Jesus. And it's not a false hope. It's not a product of wishful thinking. It's a hope that's grounded in real evidence. Jesus made it clear that it was his mission to the world. He said, I didn't come for the well, I came for the sick. He was drawn to those who needed him the most. Those who needed him were drawn to him. Not a complicated message. Regardless of the pain in your life, whether it's something totally beyond your control or even self-inflicted pain as a result of some bad decisions, Christ is there to help. Christ is there to bring you healing. You don't have to run away from God when you're in trouble, but instead you run to him. Isn't that a crazy thing? There's a lot of people who fear God and run away, but when you're in trouble, you don't run away from God. You run to him. When we feel least deserve God's love and help, he loves us and helps us anyway. It says, but without faith, no one can please God. We must believe that God is real and that he rewards everyone who searches for him. There is nothing that is off limits to God. No crisis beyond his help. One of the neat things is you and I, we're part of God's plan to help others to come to know him. He uses us as his instruments of truth and grace. Sometimes God uses us to answer the simplest questions. Sometimes he uses us to listen to and to pray for those who are hurting. God uses us to make a difference in people's lives. Now, I know that most of us would like to do something really big for God. But truth is, it's the little things that often make the biggest difference. You ever have a feeling that you've done very little to advance God's kingdom? Yet sometimes it's the simplest little acts of kindness or compassion that can turn somebody's life around. You all know how the power of some negative actions can affect your life. But I'm convinced that kindness and encouragement has even deeper consequences. I believe that positive words have more power than negative ones. Why I believe that is we're taught in the Bible very clearly that God and his word is stronger than evil. And for any of us who have come to know God and his love, most times the first door opened was somebody's kind word of love to us. In the movie, one of the main characters, Brooke, is searching for answers, but we quickly learn that she's not alone. That there's a whole lot of people that step up to help her know the truth. Particularly another student, Martin, searching for answers to his own questions, he helps her to find the answers to his. You know, so many people are afraid to talk about their faith and their trust in Jesus. You know why? Because they're afraid they don't have the right answer. And it's true, God in many ways is so mysterious. Yet the kind of questions that people are asking are pretty much the same all over the world. The same questions that seem to be repeated over and over and over again. See, most people are asking why there's pain and suffering. And so many are asking, why doesn't God do something? Don't we hear it all the time? Why do bad things happen to good people? And when people are hurting, that's not generally the time for a lecture about God. Often we're just called to listen and to be beacons of compassion. Now, there may be a list of questions that people around you have had in times of pain and grief. But the most important and critical thing for anyone to grasp is that God is not the enemy. In fact, he comes to give us hope and help against the real enemy. Martin Luther defined the enemy. He says it comes in three ways. He says it's the devil, the world, and your sinful self. That's why God's message to me and you and the world is called the good news, the gospel, because Christ has come to bring freedom to everyone and anyone found captive to the world, the devil, or even themselves. See, God's word is called the truth, whereas the enemy's word, the devil, the world, is sometimes even our own hearts are filled with deception and lying. The Apostle Paul writes, "Don't let anyone fool you by useless, senseless arguments. These arguments may sound wise, but they're only human teachings. They come from the powers of this world and not from Christ." Jesus didn't say he had the truth, he said he was the truth. See, the only hope we have is found in the gospel. And the Bible tells us that's where our true freedom lies. See, the freedom isn't the right to do what you want to do, but it's the power to do what is right. Jesus told the people who had faith in him, if you keep on obeying what I've said, you are truly my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, there's people who will try to tell you, I tried Christianity and it didn't work for me. That's like saying, I tried the multiplication tables, but they don't work for me. See, Christianity, following Christ, is just not something to just try out. It's to have a relation with the Creator of the universe. God changes our lives from the inside out. Most people just want God to fix the problems in their life. What they don't realize often is that he wants to change them first. That's not what most people are looking for, but it's what they need the most. See, for the Christian, ground zero, the cross, Calvary, all the sins of the world are placed on this one man. Did you know that more than 600 years before the crucifixion of Christ, the prophet Isaiah wrote about it? He suffered and endured great pain for us. What we thought as suffering was punishment from God. He was wounded and crushed because of our sins. By taking our punishment, he made us completely well. All of us were like sheep that had wandered off. We had gone our own way, but the Lord gave him the punishment we deserved. When we look to the ground zero of the cross, our fear can be replaced by faith, our despair by hope, in our hurts and our pain by his healing mercy. This is the place where all people can find peace, the think they so desperately need. And you can offer that word of hope to them.